I hope we don't get too much shade for this episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Out and Fired Up, the Gay Husbands on Fire podcast. I am G from Gay Husbands on Fire. My husband Jay and I are on a journey to financial independence and early retirement, and for the last few years we have been sharing our story with thousands of followers on Instagram at Gay Husbands on Fire. This is the second episode of this podcast. If you are listening on Spotify, make sure to follow our show. If you are watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Here on Out and Fired Up, we talk about all things personal finance through the lens of our personal experience as two gay guys trying to build a work-optional life through good old consistent saving and investing. In today's episode, we will explore an important question. Do you really need an emergency fund? Now, before we start, let me just say that the answer to this question isn't as straightforward as you might think. Most financial experts swear by emergency funds, and to be clear, having an emergency fund is an almost universally accepted piece of personal finance wisdom. The vast majority of financial experts will tell you that you definitely must have an emergency fund. But today, I will explore some counter-arguments to this accepted wisdom and invite you to think about this question in a more nuanced way. First, let's talk about what an emergency fund is and why you might need to have one. To be fair, this should all be very self-explanatory. At a basic level, an emergency fund is an amount of cash that you should keep to weather financial emergencies or cover unexpected situations. Standard financial advice is that your emergency fund should be equal to somewhere between 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses, and that you should keep this amount saved in cash in a separate savings account that is designated for this purpose. Emergencies can happen at any time, and they can be costly. If you don't have money set aside, you could be forced to take on debt, which can be hard to pay off. Plus, having an emergency fund can give you peace of mind knowing that you're prepared for whatever comes your way. Job loss, unexpected medical bills, car repairs, and home repairs are just a few examples of emergencies that you might need an emergency fund for. Now, while 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses is the standard advice for the size of your emergency fund, some financial experts recommend that you have much more. For example, last year, the great Susie Orman said that people should have enough funds to cover 12 months of expenses in an emergency fund, which is up from the 8 months she used to recommend previously. So, what do my husband and I do in terms of our emergency fund? Our monthly expenses fluctuate between $8,000 and $8,500. I know. That's a lot. And for years we have kept an emergency fund of no less than 3 months of monthly expenses in our high-yield savings account. This means that, currently, our emergency fund has about $25,000 in it, and we feel comfortable with that number. However, at times our emergency fund has been as high as $40,000, and this happened during periods of general uncertainty, like during the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic. While the size of our emergency fund has given us a lot of peace of mind throughout the years, recently we started to think more carefully about this. Do we really need tens of thousands of dollars saved away for emergencies? First of all, we have no debt, other than the mortgage in our apartment in New York. Our housing costs are about $3,500 per month, and if push comes to shove, in a worst-case scenario, I am confident that we could rent the place and move to cheaper housing if needed. We don't own a car, so we are not worried about the transmission in our car failing or some other thing like that. Also, we are fortunate to have reached the point in our financial journey where our investment portfolio has reached over $700,000, and a little bit more than half of that is in our taxable investment accounts, which we could access at any time. Finally, some of our investments are in a health savings account, which has over $30,000 that we could definitely use to pay for a health emergency. And, to be honest, I cannot think of the type of emergency that would require us to come up with $25,000 immediately without the chance to prepare or the opportunity to make prior arrangements. We are a 2-income household, and although it is of course possible for the two of us to lose our jobs at the same time, I don't think that this is particularly likely to happen. And because we currently keep our expenses so much lower than our income, we would be perfectly able to live only on either one of our salaries and still save and invest some money. So, are we being too conservative and losing money in the process? Every $10,000 that we do not invest could be growing in our taxable brokerage account at an average of, say, 7% or 8% per year, while our savings account is currently paying just about 3.3% per year. Our current financial situation has led us to conclude that someone in our position may have more freedom to safely ignore the general advice around emergency funds. If you have been able to build a significant nest egg for yourself, then it is maybe okay not to keep so much of your savings in cash. This also means that if you are on a journey to financial independence, at some point your investments may give you the confidence and peace of mind that is currently covered by your emergency fund. That being said, of course, we know that not everyone is in the same position that we are in. Many Americans struggle with debt and live paycheck to paycheck. A worrying number of people living in the United States say that they could not afford a $400 emergency. Many people live with chronic health conditions that require expensive treatments and medical visits. For a lot of people, a large unexpected expense or a sudden job loss may be the thing that, without exaggeration, could tip them into bankruptcy, homelessness, or worse. So building an emergency fund is not a bad idea, and in fact I think is a great idea for those with a low level of savings. Also, if your income is not very high, if you have a lot of recurring expenses that routinely take up most of your monthly income, or you are concerned about being able to find another job in a recession, then it is probably a good idea for you to build at least 6 months of savings in your emergency fund. But once your financial plane is taken off safely and you are flying fast at cruising altitude, it is probably safe and even good for you to take off your seatbelt, stretch your legs, and walk a little bit around the cabin. And please, make sure to enjoy the view out the window. After all, you have earned it. What do you all think? Do you disagree with our take? How big is your emergency fund? Leave your thoughts in the comments section, or send us a DM on Instagram at GayHusbandsandFire. We would love to get a conversation going on this. Thank you for listening to this episode today. Jay and I really appreciate you, and we hope that you find all our content helpful and fun. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast. And remember, there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Let's go find it together.
It's Friday night.